So what's up guys, my name's Ash and welcome back to a brand new video. In today's video guys, I've got some custom tactics and player instructions for the 4-2-2 to help you guys out during Shapeshifters Week 2. But just before we get started guys, I would very much appreciate it if you could drop this a thumbs up as it does really help me out. It's time for Shapeshifters, so if you guys need any coins, make sure you check out MMOXP.com. Their link is down in the description. They're fast, cheap and reliable, and if you use my code Rema, you can get yourself a very nice 5% discount. Alright then guys, so starting off with the custom tactics. For the defensive style, I like to have this on balanced as normal. Now the reason we have this on balanced is because it does give us the best control over our defense. So when we need to press and apply pressure, we're able to do that, and then when we want to drop back, be a little bit more passive and conservative, we're also able to do that. So it does give us better control than the other settings would give us. Moving on to the defensive width guys, I have this on 42. The reason I have it on 42 is so we can primarily defend in a narrow and compact shape, which will stop our opponents being able to run right through the middle of us and cut us to pieces basically, because there's going to be less gaps between our players. It's important not to lower the width too much though, because we don't want it to be too narrow to the point where we cannot cover the wider areas when an opponent tries an attack down the wing. So we want to be primarily narrow, but we still want to have some good coverage of the wide areas. Moving on to the depth guys, I have this on 67. Now the reason I have this on 67 is so I can win the ball back higher up the pitch, but we don't want to have the depth too high to the point where one through ball will absolutely destroy us with like a crazy defensive line. So I like to have it on 67 so I can win the ball back higher up the pitch, but the defensive line isn't too high to the point where we're always getting destroyed. Now some people might want to lower the depth so you know they're sitting back a bit more, which is fine, but I personally prefer to have it a bit higher. Moving on to build-up play guys, I have this on balance. This is because I believe it to be the most consistent form of build-up and the most varied form of build-up as well. So with balance, you can play slowly, you can play quickly, and you can pick and choose when and where you use each style. If you use something like fast build-up or slow build-up, for example, with slow build-up, you're always going to have to play slowly. You can't play fast with it when you decide. The same with fast build-up, you always have to play quickly and you can't really slow it down. But with balance, you could decide to play a bit slower and then speed it up a bit, so that's why I do like balanced. Now moving on to chance creation guys, I very much do suggest direct passing. This is because it's by far the most meta option in the game. Basically when you use direct passing, your attacking players will like bunch up against the opposition defenders, so you can do the super overpowered 1v1 isolation plays to create those easy chances. Players also make those extra movements in the box so you can get off that extra pass to guarantee the goals, which is why I think direct passing is an absolute must in this game. Now moving on to the attacking width guys, I have this on 47. Again, not really a specific number you need to use, but the reason I go for 47 is because the 4-2-2 is obviously a narrow formation, so we don't want it to be like super wide to the point where it feels like a 4-2-4 formation, but we also don't want to have the width too low to the point where the team feels too narrow with like players sat on top of each other, because that's actually counterproductive. So we want it to be narrow but not too narrow in attack. Moving on to players in box guys, I have this on 4. This is so we can get a few players into the box for those chances, but we don't overcommit the entire team to the point where we're always getting counter-attacked if we lose out on possession. As for corners and free kicks, I have these both on 1 because there is a set piece routine that I use which require these to be on 1. There is a link to that in the top right hand corner of the screen. Now moving on to the players you want to use guys, I'm just going to give some suggestions on each position because a lot of people ask which types of players they should be using in each position for a formation, so I thought I'd just give you my guide for each position so you guys know the types of players that you can use in each position. So for the 2 strikers, what I like to do is go for a balance between the 2 players. So I like to go for a more creative player on the left hand side. This is somebody that is going to, you know, almost act like another creative player in attack, but somebody that can also finish off those chances. And then in the other striker position, I like to go for a more clinical finisher, somebody that might not be as technical but is able to finish off all those chances. Now the reason I suggest having at least one creative player in the strike force is because again it allows you to do a lot more. If you use two out-and-out strikers that are just there to finish off chances, you're very restricted because those players are not very technical. So basically you're limited to just crossing the ball to them, through balling it to them, and then just finishing off the chances. But if you implement a more creative player into the strike force, you can do a lot more as a result. Moving on to the right cam and the left cam, I suggest you guys use like wingers. This is because these players are like the main outlets in the team, even though they are technically cams, but they will sometimes play like wingers. So it is important that you use players that are very quick, players that have decent dribbling, even good shooting and passing, because they will often find themselves in the penalty box to finish off those chances, which is why the shooting is important. But just make sure you use like competent wingers in these positions. Now moving on to the left CDM, I like to use a more defensive-minded midfielder. This is somebody that is going to stay back, break up the play, and be as defensive as possible. So I would suggest somebody with a medium-high work rate if you can get it, as you get that maximum contribution in defense and they're not too bothered about going forward. Moving on to the right CDM, I like to go for a more box-to-box style midfielder. Now this is somebody that is actually going to attack and defend, so I would suggest somebody with a high work rate if you can get it, as you get the maximum contribution in both the attack and defense, but just ensure that this player has a nice well-rounded card. As for the two fullbacks, you can pretty much use whoever you want, but what I like to do is go for one more attacking fullback in the left back position and then like a more defensive right back in the other position. That's just a balance thing that I like to do, but you guys don't have to if you don't want to. As for the two centre backs and the keeper, these just need to be as meta as you can get them. There's really not too much to say about them. Okay guys, so moving on to the player instructions. On the strikers, I like to have them both on stay central and get in behind. We have them on stay central because we don't want them drifting off into the wider areas. They are our strikers, so it is important that they do stay in those central areas where they're going to be the most use to us. We also have them on get in behind, so they're always looking to make those runs in behind to create those easy chances. Get in behind is super overpowered against like lesser skilled players, I'd say, but can still be very good against even the top players. If you're struggling against like a high-end opponent, what you can do, and what I quite often do, is switch the more creative player to mixed attack, so they make more versatile movements, get more involved in the build-up, and it just becomes a bit easier to attack. But right off the start, I have them both on get in behind. Now moving on to the right cam and the left cam, I have them both on comeback on defense and get into the box for cross. We have them on comeback on defense, so it will make the team defend in a 4-4-2 shape. Now the reason we do this is because the 4-4-2 is a much more superior defensive formation than just the 4-2-2 on its own. When we put these cams on comeback on defense, they'll come back to defend as their right mid and the left mid in a 4-4-2, which makes us both really good in both the attack and defense, which is why I like it so much. We also have them on get into the box for cross, so they're not hesitant to get into the penalty area when we do get around that spot. You know, otherwise they can be a little bit hesitant and be a little bit passive. Moving on to the left CDM, the more defensive minded player, we have them on stay back while attacking, cut passing lanes and cover center. We have him on stay back, so we always have him staying back because we don't want him going forward since he's more defensive. Cut passing lanes means he's always going to be looking to like break up the play and stuff like that and intercept passes, and cover center means he will defend those central areas. Moving on to the right CDM, the more box to box style player, we have him on the default settings and cover center. We have him on the default settings because he is a more box to box style player, which means he has a bit of a free roll and we don't really want to restrict him all that much. The only important thing is that we have him on cover center, so he does defend those central areas. Moving on to both fullbacks, I have them on stay back while attacking and overlap. Now the reason we have them on stay back is so we're always as defensively sound as possible. It means our back four is always going to be kept intact, and it's going to reduce the likelihood that we get counter-attacked quite significantly. We also have them on the overlap run type, so when we do send them on a run forward, they will make the overlapping runs instead of running narrow. What I like to do when sending these fullbacks forward is use the D-pad tactics, and then I can kind of just turn it on and off whenever I feel like it. As for the centre backs and the goalkeeper, these are on the default settings, guys, and I do not touch them. But yeah, they are my custom tactics and player instructions for the 4-2-2. If you have enjoyed or found it useful, please be sure to drop this a like, sub to the channel if you are new, and don't forget to turn on notifications. And with all that aside, guys, I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll catch you all in the next one. Peace.